Right now, you probably have a list, emails to answer, a meeting at 2, a grocery run, a workout, a deadline breathing down your neck. You feel busy. You feel behind. You assume this is just what being human means. But the real answer is far stranger. For most of the time humans have existed on this planet, there was no list. There was no deadline. There was, in a very real sense, less work to do than you do today. Does that sound impossible? It should. It contradicts almost everything you've been taught about the past. You've probably pictured your ancient ancestors as desperate, starving, spending every waking hour clawing food out of a hostile world just to survive until tomorrow. That image is everywhere. It's in your textbooks. It's in your documentaries. It's even in the word we use for that era. The Stone Age, like it was some grim, gray prelude to the real story, which is us. But in the 1960s, an anthropologist named Richard Borshay Lee decided to actually check. He didn't guess. He didn't theorize from an armchair. He went and lived with the Jew/Hwansi-San people of the Kalahari Desert in Botswana, a population still living a hunting and gathering lifestyle much like humans had for hundreds of thousands of years. He carried a notebook. He timed people. He counted calories in and calories out, hour by hour, day by day. What he found broke the model completely. The adults he studied worked, on average, about 15 hours a week to meet their nutritional needs. 15 hours. Not 15 hours a day. 15 hours a week. Sit with that for a second. You probably spend more time than that just commuting and answering emails before lunch on a Wednesday. The rest of their time wasn't spent worrying about the next meal. It was spent resting, socializing, telling stories, making music, visiting other camps, sleeping in the heat of midday. Lee's data suggested something almost offensive to the modern mind, that survival for most of human history did not require constant labor. Why does this surprise you so much? Because you've been told the opposite your entire life. You've been told that progress freed humans from drudgery, that agriculture, then industry, then technology, gave us back our time. But Lee's fieldwork pointed somewhere else entirely. It suggested that something was taken from humans long before anything was given back. The anthropologist Marshall Sahlins took Lee's findings and ran with them. In 1972, he published an essay that flipped the entire field on its head, calling hunter-gatherer societies the original affluent society. Not affluent because they had more stuff. Affluent because they wanted less, and had enough of what they wanted most of the time without grinding for it. That's a different definition of wealth than the one you grew up with. You measure wealth by accumulation. They measured it, in Sahlins' framing, by the gap between desire and supply. Close that gap, and you're rich, even with nothing in a warehouse and nothing in a bank. So what did ancient humans actually do all day, if not constantly hunt and gather? They rested. A lot. Studies of modern hunter-gatherer groups, including later work among the Hadza of Tanzania, show daily rest periods that would make a corporate HR department faint. Midday naps. Long afternoons doing essentially nothing structured. Time that, in your world, would be labeled unproductive and quietly judged. They talked. For hours. Anthropologist Polly Wiessner studied campfire conversations among the Jew/Hwansi and found that daytime talk was mostly practical, economics, complaints, coordination. But at night, around the fire, the conversation transformed. It became stories, myths, gossip about distant relatives, jokes. Wiessner's research suggested firelight itself may have shaped human cognition, extending the day into a space built for imagination rather than survival. Think about that. The fire wasn't just for warmth or cooking. It was, in a sense, the original theater, the original podcast. A nightly ritual of pure social and creative time that modern humans, you included, still crave instinctively, even if you now get it from a screen instead of a flame. They played. Children and adults both. Anthropologist James Sussman, who spent decades among the Jew/Hwansi and wrote extensively about their relationship to time and work, observed that leisure wasn't a reward earned after labor the way it is for you. It was simply the default state. Work was the interruption, not the other way around. Does this mean ancient life was easy? No, it wasn't. There was real danger. Disease without modern medicine. childbirth without hospitals, conflict, sometimes lethal. Lee's own data showed life expectancy at birth was lower, dragged down heavily by infant mortality. This isn't a fantasy of a perfect paradise. It's something more specific and more interesting, a different ratio. Less guaranteed safety, but also less constant grinding labor. So when did that ratio flip? When did humans start working more, not less? The honest answer points toward agriculture. Around 12,000 years ago, as humans in various regions began domesticating plants and animals, something counterintuitive happened. Food became more reliable in some ways, but the workload exploded. Planting, weeding, irrigating, harvesting, storing, defending stored grain from thieves and rot and rats. Farming demanded a kind of sustained, repetitive, scheduled labor that hunting and gathering never had. Skeletal evidence from early agricultural societies backs this up. Bioarchaeologists studying the bones of early farmers have repeatedly found signs of harder physical strain, more repetitive stress injuries, and in many regions, shorter stature, likely linked to poorer and less varied diets compared to the hunter-gatherers who came before them. In other words, agriculture didn't necessarily make life easier. It made it more secure, in some places, in some eras, eventually. But the immediate price was your time. All of it. And once that pattern started, it never really reversed. Cities needed labor. Empires needed taxes, which meant surplus, which meant more farming, which meant more hours in the field. The clock, when it was finally invented, didn't create the obsession with time. It just gave the obsession a face to stare at. Here's the part that should genuinely unsettle you. Every technological leap since then has promised to give you back your 15-hour week. The plow, the factory, the computer, the smartphone. Each one arrived with the same quiet promise. This will save you time. Has any of them delivered on that promise? Be honest with yourself for a second. You have a washing machine, a dishwasher, instant communication, instant food, instant information, and you almost certainly feel busier than the people in Lee's study did with none of it. Why? Because the gap Sahlins described, the space between what you want and what you have, never closed. If anything, it widened. Advertising, social comparison, an economy built on perpetual desire, all of it kept moving the finish line just as you approached it. The Yuhuanzi wanted enough. Your environment is engineered, deliberately, to make sure you never quite feel like you have enough. This isn't a call to abandon modern life and walk into the desert. That's not realistic, and frankly, it ignores the genuine medical and material gains the last few centuries have brought. But it is worth asking what, exactly, you're optimizing for when you treat busyness as a badge of honor. Because somewhere in your brain, underneath the calendar notifications and the unread messages, you're still running ancient software. A part of you still expects long afternoons doing nothing in particular. A part of you still wants the fire, the stories, the unstructured night. You feel the absence of that, even if you can't name it. You call it burnout. Your ancestors would have just called it Tuesday. So the next time your to-do list feels endless, remember Richard Lee's notebook in the Kalahari. Remember the 15 hours. It isn't proof that the past was better. It's proof that exhaustion was never the natural price of being human. It was, somewhere along the way, a choice your species made, and one that's never fully been undone. Hope you enjoyed the video. Like, subscribe, and hit the bell for more. Comment what you want next.